appropriate. We don't want to say anything that'll be a violation of our student code of conduct, so be mindful of your words, what you choose to say, and how you opt into treating others. Okay. Here we are. Here we are. We are first setting ourselves up for success. I'm launching the poll too. I know it's double duty. They don't give us access to seating. This is not attendance. This is just me logging who's coming, who's not coming, not for points or anything else like that. Just to let me know if I want to offer face-to-face classes. I have a class of 35 students that meets Monday mornings 9 to 11:45 a.m. It's a stretch. I had 63% Zooming in today, with only probably 5 of those having reasons, and I put that in quote because why ever you choose to not be in class. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to keep offering face-to-face classes. And when we have 81% of the students who are engaging in this class coming in remotely, I don't know, it's a quite a big expenditure, and it's a lot of resources in order to make the face-to-face class happen. So I'm just trying to be mindful, be economical, right? Like, what if me holding a remote class would have just saved 25 cars from driving into campus, right? That's kind of attractive to me. But I love teaching in person. Hence the reason why I offered or opted into being here in the first place. So I'll leave the access in, just keep the poll open for a little bit longer. I wanted to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Unit 2 essay grading. I just wanted to let you know before I hide the row that I'm going to hide the row while I'm grading it. We'll be sure to get that feedback to you before Unit 3 essay becomes live and active. Research. I have students submitting their research summaries. I have students that have completed all 5 credits. Just a reminder, right? We are in week 6 of a 10-week class, which means that we only have a month left. And so you need to be on your research. You need to get it done, and you can submit your survey summary as soon as you want to, just because most people are taking surveys. In fact, I don't know of anybody who's doing anything face-to-face right now. Oh, there might be a study or two. We do have a few developmental researchers that tends to have people come in. Any other housekeeping that I can address? TAs, if you see anything in the chat, let me know.
One student wanted to make sure that if they're remote, if they need to do the seating survey on Blackboard to mark that they were present.
No, I'm not. Like I said, I'm not using it for attendance. And what they're having you do is, I believe that they updated the survey, the seating survey, for a remote option. They just need to be able to do contact tracing. They need to know who's sitting where and who's sitting near them. So in case somebody does come up with a positive test for COVID, that they're able to empower and inform other people. So all for good, all for good. Okay, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and close our poll. It looks like I still have 4 people who haven't voted. And that's all right. That is okay. Okay, we're gonna do quite a bit of polling today. I had so many questions that I wanted to ask you. And normally, right, when we're in a face-to-face class, I'll be like, raise your hand if you, and that's not really available to me. So I'm kind of working with that. I appreciate your patience. All right, questions. FAQs. What is the best way to remember Jung's theory? Jung is a student of Freud, okay? So take the Freud, remove the sexualization, create a slightly deeper meaning with the collective unconscious. And that might be a really great way to remember Freud, or pardon me, Jung. And Jung is also really famous for dream analysis and archetypal understanding. We use archetypes throughout our culture now a lot in therapeutic interventions, in life coaching, in personality assessments, in suggestions for employment. We use a lot of Jung's ideas throughout. I actually have a fascination with Jung. I can't read his writing, not handwriting, but like he's really deep theoretical. There is some of it that I've been able to digest, but I think it's outside of my scope or my willingness, so it makes it a little bit harder, just a little bit harder. All right. Not quite sure why Jung's theory just came back up. What personality type affects the way that we cope with negative experiences? Oh my gosh. Well, we have type A and type B personality. Type B people tend to be pretty chill, kind of go with the flow. They tend to navigate negative experiences in a slightly more open and empathetic way, whereas individuals with type A personalities tend to struggle a lot when things happen that are outside of their control. Type A is typically associated with heart disease. I mean, if I were to draw a corollary, but really time is really important to individuals with type A. Perfectionism is really important for individuals with type A. There are lots of personality factors. There's another personality nuance. It's called hostile misattribution bias. And this isn't what our textbook was talking about regarding the feedback loop of power and control. That's definitely something you should check out. And I know that I still appreciate reviewing that information for myself, but we have these individuals who interpret everything as an affront. Everything is hostile or treated as if it's a hostile engagement. And so they have this, what they call a hostile misattribution bias, which means that they are biased to attributing hostile intent to people's innocuous actions, which is really tough, those individuals tend to not cope very well. Same thing with type A individuals. Their experience with coping is really limited given their sense and their desire for control. The differences between the ego, the superego, and the id. Well, we can think about the iceberg, right? Ego is what we all see, right? It's the most present piece. We see some superego, but most of the superego is below the surface. And the id is everything down towards the bottom. Now, the id is what we call the pleasure center, right? The pleasure principle. The id primarily functions for self-gratification. The id functions to feel good, to look good, to seem good, to indulge all of the senses, to be fully self-centered. And the id, right, is the space that creates some tension for us. Because the superego, which is our moral principle, chimes in and says, you can't do that. You can't eat a whole cheesecake. I know you want to eat a whole cheesecake, but you cannot eat a whole cheesecake. That is not okay. So then what happens is that we have the ego, which will take a slice of cheesecake and then order an extra slice to go home and eat it later. But when we think about the pleasure, the moral, and the reality, the ego represents reality, what we show and what we represent, which from Freudian psychologists, they believe that the ego was just the manifestation of a suppressed id. So one way to think about it is of all the people, right, that you run into, the people that seem to be really hedonistic, the people that seem to be really pleasure-centered and self-serving, we would suggest that they have a weaker ego than they do id, right, that their id comes through really, really strongly. How do psychologists determine how accurately personality test is? Oh my gosh, is there an objective way to test this? So we have reliability and we have validity. Reliability is when something actually is consistent in how it's demonstrated. And so what we do with reliability is anytime we formulate an assessment, psychometric, right? That's the psychological term for personality assessment, is a psychometric. We want things to be reliable and we want them to be valid, right? We want them to be valid in that they actually test what we say they're going to test. So one of the ways that we establish validity is we will take our assessment, our personality assessment that we dreamed up, and then we'll gather some other data and just be able to show how that other data supports, right, consistent responses in that other data also has a consistent response on the personality test. So then that way we know it's valid. Sometimes we use measures as with predictive validity. So if I give somebody a personality assessment and I say that their score on this is predictive of how they will partner, right? What sort of coupling they will make. And then what I would want to do is I would want to follow those people to actually see if they couple in the way that that test predicts. That's predictive validity. Lots of ways. And reliability means, because personality is supposed to be considered stable, that I could take a personality assessment 6 months ago, right now, and then 6 months from now, and they should be the same every time. That's how we determine how accurate a personality test is. Now, as is the case with so much of psychology, it's really, we have to talk about ranges, right? And we have to talk about situationals. One of the best questions you guys asked me already this semester was related to parenting styles. There are different times and different circumstances where you need to be more authoritative or more authoritarian or maybe more permissive or maybe even more indulgent. And knowing that that variation exists and exists naturally is pretty invaluable. So when we talk about accuracy, I could see somebody having a major life event happen to them, which we'll talk about some major life events happen today, but have a major life event happen to them and their personality could change. They could be less open. They could be more narcissistic. They could be less agreeable. They could be maybe less conscientious. You know, I'm specifically thinking about trauma. I'm thinking about what happens for a lot of people when they experience trauma and how the shifts that we see in their personality can, you know, significantly change who they are and how they interact. So, Luke, did you have a question? You're unmuted right now. No?
It told me that you asked me to unmute.
Oh, it was showing you as unmuted. That's weird. That's very curious. All right. These are awesome questions, you guys. Thank you. Oh, I got more. I have my TA, I have a TA of mine set this up, so I just get to answer them blind and I don't get to filter them. What is both subjective and objective personality? So, okay, so subjective personality is things like Freud and Jung, right? That their personalities are dependent upon people's other people's interpretations. So a therapist, basically, that would be subjective. Objective personality, the focus of that are the traits that we look at, right? The statistical measures, the factor analysis that we do. Are there external factors that contribute to our personality type? What are they? Well, we can think about nature and nurture, right? If my nature, my biological piece of personality is temperament, and I have a difficult temperament, and let's say I am in a family that also has difficult temperaments, I am not going to be nurtured in the same way that I would if I was in a family of origin where they were more nurturing. So nature is my biology, right? And that's temperament in regards to personality. And then nurture are all of these other factors that impact and influence how we develop. We're actually going to talk about some of the external factors that influence personality today, and we're going to talk about them in the context of stress. And they're probably what you would think of, you know, age, gender, race, socioeconomic status. Those things influence personality type as well. That's not to say that all people who have X amount of income or were raised in this specific way will have these specific personality factors, but there are certain life circumstances and factors that we can use to predict somebody's personality. What qualities make someone an extrovert, introvert, or ambivert? So extroverted, when we talk about this aspect of personality, especially when we refer to the Jungian personality types, extroverts tend to be people who feel restored and reinvigorated through sharing space with other people. So extroverts are individuals who really seek out other people to share space with, specifically for comfort, for insight. Introverts, on the other hand, don't necessarily feel, it's hard because our culture has extrapolated so much to say that person's an introvert and that person's an extrovert. Well, an introvert, somebody can be shy, right, and still be friendly. Somebody can be, right, there's this really, we have a lot of crossover. But personality-wise, specifically, everything I just said about extrovert, and then with introverts, they find the greatest degree of comfort and familiarity and stability in environments when they can be by themselves, or infrequently, right? Infrequently around very small groups of people. So when we think about introvert, extrovert, these are the spaces and places where people feel recharged and most effective. An ambivert, which is a term that a lot of you had said was news to you, was this unique combination, right? Somebody who can be around others and be gregarious and affable and really effective socially, and enjoy that, right? Be genuinely, you know, completed by that or fulfilled by that. But they also have that introvert quality where being by themselves is really affirming and provides a lot of stability for them. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next question. Is a correlation between personality and stages of development? I am not sure. So I think the question might mean, so personality is supposed to be a stable, enduring characteristic and pattern of interaction. So it would be something that would almost be like a constant, independent of developmental stage or environment. And so if I am an ambivert, I'm an ambivert at 5, 15, 25, 35, 45. If I'm an extrovert, that is a quality that I have. Now, a lot of people will say, I used to be an introvert and now I'm an extrovert. And I think that researchers would actually challenge that and say, were you ever assessed, right? And a lot of people, and this was one of the points that you guys got last week, was that I can be gregarious, I can be animated, I can be out there, I can be engaging other people. But that does not always represent your personality, right? I mean, this is the role that I fill as a professor, as a presenter, as a facilitator. There's a certain amount of persona that I embody in order to be effective in this space. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm like this all the time. God forbid I live like this with my kids. That would be rough. That would be rough. Although I wonder what it would look like if I didn't let them submit anything late either. Like no soup for you, maybe. I don't know. All right, I think that took care of our questions. I saw you smile, Luke. All right. Oh, hello. Let's back up. Thank you very much. You guys don't get to meet Devin because she's one of our TAs that can't actually make it to class, but Devin is the person that made all the pretty slides. All the other shitty slides are my slides, but Devin made pretty ones. So this is one of Devin's pretty ones. This, folks, is the whole reason why I reinvented this class over the summer. I wanted to be able to talk about health and well-being. I wanted there to be space for it. I wanted there to be time for it. I also wanted to thread positive psychology throughout the entire class. I wanted to be talking about positive psychology from day one, and that is what we've accomplished. Now, why is that important? Because everybody remembers their Psych 101 class. The funniest thing happened to me. I was actually traveling with 2 other colleagues from Boise State last summer, summer 2019. And we were sitting there and we were talking, and he's like, well, yeah, you know, it was a male and a female. They weren't a couple. They worked together. And he says to me, yeah, I had a psych, I took psych at Boise State because he had also gone to U of I. And I was like, well, who's your professor? He's like, I don't remember who my professor was, but oh my God, She told me this story that blew my mind. And he proceeded to tell a story from my own life. I laughed so freaking hard. I was like, you can't remember who your professor is, but you remember every detail of that story. He's like, yeah, that thing freaked me out. I was like, I was your professor. And he was like, no way. It was, God, we laughed for hours. It was so funny. But you're going to forget me. You're going to forget me, but you're going to remember the science. The research shows us that time and time again is that this is the most recognized, remembered class on campus. And the reason being is that this is the first time you're really given permission to think about yourself, not so much in a self-centered way, but in a reflective, building, growing way. And we're also exposing you to the science. So even if you took AP Psych 101, which a lot of people do, you get introduced to it. You know, a lot of people remember psychology because this is where you learn about human development. This is where you learn about the qualities of interactions, the qualities of who you are that are going to carry you forward and empower you to be successful. So if I could empower you with anything, if I could imbibe, imbue, embolden you to take on any charge from this class, it's going to be to elevate your well-being to consciousness. Instead of assuming everything's fine because you're not stressed out, make well-being an agenda item. Make it something on your to-do list. And I'm not talking about the cultural decadence of self-care, okay? Well-being is not about a facial. Well-being is not about a pedicure, okay? Well-being is so much more than that. It is how you set your quality of life. Now, you guys know about the science of flourishing. You understand PERMA, right? Positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment or achievement. You guys have that. Like, you understand that that is what contributes to your quality of life. Okay? Well-being, right, is how all of that manifests. So here we are. At the end of this unit, students will be able to identify when it is time to take a step back from work load due to stress. Oh my God, if I could keep you guys from getting burnt out, that would be so delicious. At the end of this unit, students will be able to identify resources to help with well-being. Yes, yes, you will. And at the end of this unit, students will be able to understand that everyone has different coping skills and strategies. We're going to start off talking about stress first, and then we're going to shift to coping, and then we're going to focus Wednesday on some of the mechanisms of well-being and how to improve your overall quality of life. Now, this first task, right? How do you know when to take a step back? Most people, most grown-ass people who are in charge of their own bank accounts, who go to work every day, don't know when they're burnt out. Okay? When you have trouble focusing, when you have trouble completing tasks, when you have trouble finding meaning in the tasks that you're completing, and this could just be in one avenue of your life, those are some of the flags that indicate burnout. Now, I laugh about this because I was burnt out and I didn't even know it. I didn't know it. I just thought I was working a lot, and I was working a lot. But all of those things that I was doing started to not just become a lot, they started to lose the give back, right? That giving loop, right? Me putting effort and energy and creativity out. Anytime I extend that, I get something back, right? And if I've got a really good exchange rate, I put out that effort, energy, and creativity, and it comes back to me tenfold, okay? Burnout is when we're putting those things out there and we're not getting anything back anymore. Yeah, it could be from doing a lot. One of the reasons why I made this class a 10-week semester is, remember all those Fs that I showed you? Right? And I told you how a significant percentage, like 85% of those Fs, weren't actually earned. They were given to students because they stopped working. One of my ideas was that if I no longer taught a 16-week term, maybe I'd be able to catch those students before they fell off the face of the earth and stopped engaging in class. Well, and now I have this, what we call a confounding variable called COVID. And one of the things you guys are going to learn today is that your brain right now is already operating in fight, flight, or freeze all of the time. Because every situation and circumstance is different. Right? I could ask you right now, how many of you have felt anxiety when you've left the house and either not had a mask on or been prepared to engage other people? Happens all the time. Yeah, it happens all the time. How many of you have become upset or frustrated when somebody else wasn't wearing a mask or taking safety precautions to ensure everybody else's safety? How many of you have been threatened or felt vulnerable by a sign or had a visceral response to a bumper sticker? Okay? Or read something or heard something that made you upset or enraged you. Our brains right now are already working overtime because we're interpreting everything that's coming into us, and we think that we have to have a response of fight, flight, or freeze to everything. So we're using our mammalian brain, the rudimentary part of our brain, to help us navigate our environment right now. And so if you're fucking exhausted, you have a right to be. I cannot tell you how many people I have engaged with recently that are just, they're numb. They are so tired. They're tired of politics. They're tired of COVID. They're tired of homeschooling their kids, right? They're tired of having to navigate the arena and shitty Wi-Fi. Y'all need to take a break. Give yourself a break. Take a respite because you are under stress, whether or not you've realized it. Now, our culture makes a big show of, I'm launching another poll. Our culture makes a really big show of stress, right? And how much is going on and what's going on for them and others. Okay? But we've really stepped away from the science and how we're using that, the concept of stress. So we are going to ground ourselves back into the realities of stress and talk specifically about some of the ways we experience stress and some of the ways that we can navigate and manage that stress. I'm going to leave that poll open. And, well, I'm going to leave that poll open for a second because the next slide I have is a discussion. I'm going to have you guys bust out into discussion groups. Surprise, surprise. Oh, new rule. If you get put into a discussion group and nobody engages, you're going to pop back into the main room. We're going to reassign you to another room, and we'll just take note of the people who decided not to engage. I hadn't realized how big of a problem this was until I actually popped into a group where nobody had their screens on and nobody was talking. Don't keep other people from an education. Please engage in the topic. And if you've decided to go shopping at JCPenney's or wherever you are right now listening to this class, do your colleagues a favor and engage with them as well. So we had you guys do a few things. And I see you guys have almost completed the polls. Awesome. So I'm going to end polling, and then I just want to show it to you really quick. Right, for for 3 people out of 157, for 3 of them, their stress decreased greatly over the last 6 months. Could have been any number of things. High school could have been very different. Maybe their living situation changed. Decreased minimally, 4 people. For 3 people, it stayed about the same. For 40 people, it increased minimally, and for 104 people, it increased greatly. So one of the reasons why I wanted to take this poll is before I send you guys into these breakout rooms, I want you to know that you're not alone. Now, I'm not asking you to share details. I'm not asking you to get vulnerable. What I'm asking is for you, and you can speak clinically if you need to talk to each other about your own stress. Like, what did taking these surveys and participating in the preparation content for this class teach you about yourself? All right. Done sharing results. Gonna go set up my breakout rooms. All right, you guys are going to chat for approximately 5 or so minutes. All rooms are open. All rooms are open. Remember, you're going to be talking about what you learned about your own stress and getting ready for today's class. Hey, Hannah, will you do me a favor and write down the names of people who didn't go into discussion rooms? And you can just shoot those, keep a list of those, a running list of those. So it looks like Dylan and Megan.
Henderson, my breakout room has that weird white screen again.
That is so weird.
I don't know if it's like a problem with my Wi-Fi or what, but it doesn't affect any of my other classes, just this one.
Huh. I do
I
not
actually want to
understand that.
pop in to that breakout room and see
Which one
because I
is
can't
it?
even see them. 29.
Okay, I will pop in and see if everything's okay, if they're actually able to do stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You guys already talked about it.
Talon, what stress are you experiencing?
Oh, just normal classwork stress, you know. It's mainly just procrastinating at this point. I just procrastinate, and so I stress myself out. But other than that, it's going fine.
Yeah, I'd say school is like probably one of the biggest stressors in my life right now. And also like the whole pandemic thing.
Yeah. Is I left the breakout room, Dr. Henderson, because it was me and Taylor and then one other student. So one of us left. I didn't know if that's okay.
Hey, Talon, were you able to talk to the student at all?
Hold on. Sorry, hold on. Yeah, she did talk, but it was just me and Taylor, so we thought it would be good if one of us left, and then if like a different student ended up going.
Okay.
But yeah, she talked to us about like stress, and apparently she had to do another stress related topic in a different class, so it kind of meshed.
Oh, perfect. I like it when those things come together. All right, you can mute up again, Talon. Thanks.
I'm sorry that I keep popping in, everyone. My Zoom keeps shutting off.
You're all good, Finn. What kind of stress have you been experiencing?
I think for me, ever since work changed to remote, my work has actually gotten busier. So that's a kind of stress that's increased a lot. And during the readings, I kind of learned more about how stress works, and especially if it gets to like that point where uh, the secondary, what is it called, like secondary appraisal, where you are determining whether or not it's like a low threat or a high threat. There's just been like, and how that's determined by like if you have enough options. And lately with COVID and everything, and having deadlines that you don't have time for and things like that, it feels like that automatically cranks everything up to a high threat, just because it seems almost impossible to finish things.
Yeah, definitely. I think right now everyone's juggling a lot, especially with the pandemic going on. It's making school and work and everything in general a lot more difficult. What have you found to be like your best coping mechanisms dealing with stress?
I feel like enforcing breaks instead of I think that like internalized capitalism feel of feeling like you're lazy if you take any kind of moment not working is really strong in me. So I just am kind of enforcing myself, because if I don't do that, then it just gets way worse, and I feel that burnout. And when I feel that burnout, I really can't work, and I don't even feel good about relaxing even at that point, because when you feel behind, it just keeps getting worse. So I've just been trying to enforce breaks and make it so that I pace everything, and also just trying to maintain a schedule, like we came up with at the beginning of the semester, trying to maintain a specific schedule so that you don't fall behind too far. As long as you're working on everything little bits at a time and taking breaks, it seems to feel a lot better than just like, oh, thinking about all the stuff that we have to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that that's super important right now. I know for me, I'm doing a lot of things from the same room at my house, like school, personal time, everything. So it's really hard to like differentiate between when it's okay for me to take a break and not feel like I'm being lazy and just dedicate some time to like my personal well-being. I think it's really hard to do that right now since we're doing everything in basically the same environment.
I am completely in the same boat, because I have a desk set up now in my room, and so everything's in my room. That's why I like going in person in this class, just because it's nice to it's nice to have somewhere to go.
How about now? Can you hear me now? I had turned my microphone off when I went to go take a drink. I thought that would be annoying. I was not muted. My microphone was off. All right. So I wanted to address a few of the comments in the chats from earlier. When I'm talking about that stress, especially the stress that you need a break from, it can be eustress and distress, right? So eustress is that positive stuff that gets us motivated and keeps us moving forward. And culturally, that can also be viewed as like a really positive experience or a socially positive event, but it's still stress. It's still taxing on the body. It still compromises your heart. It still increases your blood pressure. It still increases cortisol levels. Okay, eustress is still stress. It's the coping that matters, right? It's the coping. It's the management of the stress and the feelings. So somebody said, how do you take a break, right? When one slip up and you're so far behind and you miss stuff. The only way you can actually, no, let me rephrase that. You can take a break at any time. It's what you do in that break right? How can you use that time, that break time, to be the most restorative and the most effective for you? And that's what we're going to be talking about when we talk about well-being. Okay, making the best bang for your buck. And I'm sure the best bang for your buck is probably going to be different for everybody. But what we see scientifically is that there's some pretty significant, consistent things that you can do, that we can all do. All right, if you guys wouldn't mind popping into the chat and just tell me a little bit about what you learned about your own stress from the activities, right? From the stuff that I had you guys do. All of the content that we expose you guys to, we want you to see what it feels like to be in the science. That's why we have you taking surveys. I'm way more stressed than I thought. Yep. Some people are feeling like, wow, I'm doing a good job of this. Control informs my experience of stress. I have a problem coping with stress and decreasing stress. I'm good at handling my stress. When I recognize it, that's a really good point. I'm type A, so everything stresses me out. That's I identify with that. Stress is affecting my well-being, right? There's some additional awareness in it. Good. Due dates stress me out, even when they shouldn't feel like they're looming. I understand that. Am I going to die sooner if I'm type A? The research isn't really great, right? The research says that there is a shorter lifespan for individuals who are type A. Now, remember, type A and type B is still on a continuum. Remember, that's one of our important principles in psychology, is that we're always going to be thinking about things like applied things, but we also want to keep in mind that it's a continuum. So, you know, type A, type B, you could be over here and be more type A than type B, but not in the extreme of type A. So be kind to yourself. Stress is hurting your mental health. Forgot the quiz. If you're Mary, if you're talking about the quiz for our class, you can still submit it for late points, which is 50% credit. You don't have that available to you on essays, research, or the final, but you can do that for anything else. All right. Pare down engagement. Is it possible to be in the middle, or are all people either type A or type B? I think that we tend to class it. We don't have anybody that stays straight in the center, right? They're either more of one or the other. Excellent, great insights, folks. It sounds like some of you mentioned some of the resources that you have in your life that allow you and empower you to cope. I cannot stress enough how important that is, just given the impact of other people. Social support is one of our most significant coping resources. Do not confuse that with social media, right? Social support is exponentially different from social media. So I have you guys, have you taken another poll? I know, me and my polls. Let me see if I've got that. Oh, okay. All right, just a quick one. Quick, easy question. Who has more stress, males or females? Now, if I was a good scientist, I'd have asked the gender of everybody in here, and then we could have these in like quadrants, right? The males that said males, the males that said females, the females that said females. All right, we're going to call that good. Here we go. So go ahead and type in the chat. Why do you think females are more stressed? Do you think that's just unique to our DNA? We're just a little extra. Hormones, smarter. They're smarter. Hormones. They're emotional. They care more. Prescribed pressure from society. They're typically more detailed oriented, more emotional. Hormones, societal expectations. I see a theme here, folks. Well, guess what? Women are more stressed out than men. Women are more stressed out because my mom tells me all the time. Women are stressed out more than men. And the research suggests that it has less to do with hormones and more to do with cultural expectations. One of the things that we saw in 1993, right, when we think about the shift from 1993 to 2006 and then to 2009, this is just data from our textbook, by the way. Maybe one of the things that I'll try to do between now and the next class is update this for 2020, and maybe even just compare 2019 to 2020 stress experiences. Typically, women end up feeling the most stress, especially older women, given cultural demands of being all things to all people. There was a big article in The Atlantic a few years ago that was really radical, and it was really radical because they said women can't have it all, and that really pissed off some people. I'm sending out another poll. That really pissed off some people, but our culture has been telling women for years, you really can be a superstar mom and also have a fabulous career and a wonderful sex life and a great group of friends. And this article kind of debunked it and said, you know what, we've been trying to have it all and it's killing us. And so we need to stop doing that. So there are a lot of cultural expectations. So who has more stress, older people or younger people? And I just really wanted to keep this simple in order to get the surveys done quickly. Because there are lots more qualities, and you'll see one that's a little bit beefier here in a few. So about 92%, right? About 92% of you are suggesting that younger people experience more stress. And if you look at this little diagram, that indeed is pretty accurate. Although we saw some shifts from 2006 to 2009. One of the things that I want to point out is one of the bigger shifts that we've seen is, in 2000, straight up is when we started to really identify emerging adulthood, and that going to college became the norm rather than the abnorm. So that might be one of the reasons why we see the shift from 2006 to 2009. And for those of you that are having a hard time with the colors, that topmost line is the less than 25 years of age. Whereas older people, right, your assumption might be that, yeah, you are biased. The assumption might be because older people aren't working, that might be it. Older people have also spent a lifetime of setting boundaries and figuring out who they are. And knowing who you are and having good boundaries is one of the reasons why a lot of older people don't experience as much stress as younger people. Most of the time, what's stressing us out is navigating the expectations and boundaries that we have and that others have for us. All right. I think I am. All right, I got a 3-for-1 special here, a 3-question poll. There we go. Results are coming in. Excellent. Now, if I had asked this question a year ago, I think that we would have different results. The spirit of them would still be the same, but the extreme nature of your responses. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the poll there so I can go ahead and share that with you guys. In regards to race, and I'm using the languaging that was on our in our textbook. White individuals experience less stress compared to other, primarily Asian populations, Asian, indigenous, and individuals who identified as Black experienced the most in 1983, but then definitely had a shift and a change. Now, this is 2009, folks. If I had asked this question today, I think that we would have dramatically different results. All right. In regards to education, we have, oh yeah, 50-50, here we go. Less than high school, those individuals tend to experience more stress. I'm wondering what is the active agent that you guys think is happening when it comes to education? Why are people with advanced education experiencing less stress? What do you think might be the catalyst or the meaningful information here? Financial security, okay, more opportunities, more stability. All right, so you're thinking that it's employment. And employment is absolutely some low-hanging fruit that means a lot. I would challenge you to think a little bit more broadly and think about the relationship and the impact of control in stress. Somebody had mentioned it in the chat when they were just sort of debriefing on what they learned about themselves through the assessments that prepared them for today. And what I'd heard or what I read was that, you know, less control equals stress. Individuals who have higher education have access to more resources. Is that jobs? Yes. Is that money? Yes. But they are also more educated and they're more likely to advocate for themselves effectively when it comes against state institutions, when it requires them to lobby to get money back from the rental car in order to, because saying that they dinged it and they didn't ding it. Individuals with a higher education are more likely to follow through and set those boundaries and exercise more control in their environment. All right, who has more stress? People with less money or people with more money? Oh, I didn't ask the question about employment. Income is the last one. I'm sure this is a no duh. This is a no duh. Now this is stress. If I were to actually ask you about happiness, I think you guys would be shocked at how these scores would almost be entirely inverted. That even though people who have less income have more stress, they would also identify as having greater happiness than those people who are wealthier. Yeah, I know it's kind of trippy to think about that. And so what is the relationship between stress and happiness? What is that relationship? We have the good, the bad, and the lovingly ugly. I'll stop sharing those results. Oh, my other poll did not show. Okay, well, that's curious. We have the good, the bad, and the ugly. When it comes to good, we have eustress. I had several people talk about eustress. This is that positive stress that gets us moving, that gets us motivated, that gets us engaged, that empowers, that directs and energizes us, that forces creativity, that empowers us with the desperation to become innovative. I remember this spring, it was the first weekend in April, and I was teaching a workshop that I taught face-to-face for, you know, several offerings. And then all of a sudden I was given a week's notice to say, guess what, you need to make this all online. And I was like, oh God, what am I gonna do? And that was really stressful, right? That was really stressful. But in many ways, it really forced me to be creative, innovative. I had to discover and explore new apps in order to get my students to engage in a similar way in the online environment as I would have them engage face-to-face. Eustress, and our book tells you that it's the good stress, right? It's the stuff that has us striving and achieving. Well, guess what, folks? Remember when we talked about emotion? It is still stress. Physiologically, your cortisol levels are still increasing. You're still having consequences to your cardiovascular system. You're still having brain functioning issues. Okay? All of those things are still happening, even if something is in eustress or it's a good thing. Now, distress is the one that, you know, carries a greater physiological consequence. We'll talk about eustress or distress in a few. The other good thing is we celebrate major milestones. We celebrate having a baby. Having a baby and losing a loved one cause the same amount of stress. Postpartum depression, post-grief response. Significant psychological outcomes, major dramatic life shifts. Having a baby, you have insomnia. Your eating habits change. Your control level decreases exponentially, especially if you're a breastfeeding mom. Okay, then you have, if you're a female, you have your coupled with hormones and those fluctuations. And yes, dad's hormones fluctuate too. But in our culture, because it's a positive thing, right? Because getting married and all the stress that you go through to get married, right, is a good thing. It's viewed as positive. It's still stress. It still has consequences on your body. Now, because there is a, and I put it in quotes, but positive outcome at the end of it, you have a justification for it to say, oh, this is all worth it. This is worth it. I'm going to have the day of my dreams. So yes, going through all this stress to prepare a wedding is totally worth it. Yes, raising this baby, having this baby, staying home with this baby, getting up in the middle of the night, all of this is totally worth it. Now, what would happen if we took our bad stress and we put the same spin on it? What would happen cognitively if we had a growth mindset and we were able to reframe negative life events, right? Stereotypical stressful situations. And we were able to say, hey, you know what? Some good is going to come of this. I'm going to be a better person because of this experience. I'm going to try harder. I'm going to be more compassionate. I'm going to be more patient. What if we spent the same amount of resources reframing and utilizing negative stress as we already give permission for positive things in our lives? Just because this culture has a party to get me ready for a baby, guess what? This culture also has a party to prepare me for living a life without a loved one. It's called the funeral. Now, I don't ascribe to any specific religion. I do read, if I'm given the opportunity to read, I tend to read a lot more about Buddhism and Hinduism and Jainism than other things. But this has a lot to do with their perspective of life as a whole, right? Instead of being attached to good or bad, just honoring and recognizing the experience itself. Honoring and recognizing the milestone, whether a life is coming or whether a life is going, whether a marriage is beginning or whether a marriage is ending. Celebrating your first day of school, celebrating your last day of school, celebrating the day you decide that you don't want to go to school anymore. We assign this positive and negative value to so many things in our life, and what happens when we do that is we keep ourselves from being able to be grounded in the experience of something and instead staying focused on the cultural quality of what we are experiencing. I know that's kind of a theoretical leap, but this is all part of the coping puzzle. It's all part of the coping toolbox. Being able to reframe things, being able to take responsibility, being able to say, you know what, this is really hard right now, but good things will come of it. All of those, right, are part of this bad stress. Now, the bad stress are major negative life events, right? Like singular, large episodes of events. For example, 9/11, right? Singular, catastrophic, acute event. Something that happened, something that where we can mark as a culture a before and an after. We're going to be able to say this about COVID. God willing, we'll be able to say that there's an after of COVID. Okay? Something where we can say this is what it was like before X and this is what it's like after X. Major life events. Why didn't I have those be the ugly ones? The reason being is that the sleeper, right, the thing that has the greatest amount of consequence on us is the hassles. It wasn't just 9/11. It's the oppression of people. Okay? It's not just COVID, right? It's navigating the differences maybe between individualistic and collectivist cultures. Navigating different rights, resources, and responsibilities. I'm not saying good or bad. Okay? All of these things build towards daily hassles, right? It's not the singular nuclear meltdown that screws up the environment. It's the constant exposure to toxins and toxicity. And we can talk about literal toxins and toxicity in our environment, or we can talk about emotional and psychological toxins and toxicity. All of those are stress. All of those are stress on us. All of those are stress and consequences on our bodies. All right. What I want you guys to do now is we're going to send you into another breakout, and I want you to discuss your own experience of learned helplessness. Now, you should have all been able to identify, and for those of you that are like, oh shit, I didn't do the reading, what's learned helplessness? The gentleman that gave us PERMA, Martin Seligman, okay, prior to becoming the positive psychology founder, guru, champion that he is now, he did this research on learned helplessness where he placed puppies in a cage and he electrified the grate underneath the puppy. And the puppy could jump into a non-electrified side. Well, what he eventually did is he made it so that puppy couldn't jump into the non-electrocuted side. And so the puppy got shocked continuously. He admits to this day that he regrets that study. But that puppy was shocked continuously over on this side. So then when that puppy was placed back in the same environment where it could escape, it chose not to, because it had tried and tried and tried and was unable to escape. So it just gave up. It's what we call learned helplessness. Okay? So what I want you guys to do, for those, that's just in case, for those of you that didn't read it, now you have a primer. I'm going to send you into your breakout rooms, and I just want you to discuss briefly with your peers what is an example, and it could be specifically to you, or it could be a little bit more globally. All right, Hannah. Everybody, breakout rooms are open. You betcha. Yeah, take care of you. Can you hear me now? I keep turning off my mic. All right, so coping is all about managing the mischief, right? We all have stress. We've all identified we have different stressors. We all know that it's happening. One of the things that I hope that you guys learned from each other in regards to learned helplessness is that there are different things that are going to make other people feel powerless and ineffectual. And so when we think about it, learned helplessness has a lot to do with perseverance and grit. And I know that that's a big sexy word right now in the self-help world. But the thing with grit is that what we advocate for is that if you can't get what you need by hitting something straight on, try going around it. Try coming around the back side towards the front side, empowering yourself. Coping is all about managing the stress. We're going to have it, period. There's no way around it. We're absolutely going to be experiencing it. How are we going to manage it, period? Now, our book has so many wonderful suggestions. It talks about problem-focused and emotion-focused coping, right? That means that we're either addressing our feelings in response to the circumstance, or we're addressing the problem itself, right? How can I find a solution? The majority of individuals actually do both. They'll navigate their feelings while also navigating the actual solution to the problem. One of the things that I want to point out is that when we experience stress, we have to identify whether that stress is a threat, which means that it's going to compromise our well-being, or a challenge, which means that I'm not entirely sure I have those resources, but I'm pretty sure I have them. I think I'm going to be okay. Or at the very least, I have people I can ask in order to do that. When we have threat stress, we reduce our coping capacity. When we have challenge stress, we increase our coping capacity. So when we're confronted with situations and circumstances that are stressful, which we all are confronted on a regular basis, identifying for ourselves whether this is something that I actually have any say in whatsoever, okay? Identifying that first allows us to be more empowered when we're coping. And allows us to be more empowered when we're coping, because if this is something that I have no control over whatsoever, then I know that I can just focus on my emotions. I can be efficient in my coping. But if this thing is something that I actually do have some say in, I get to navigate my emotions as well as begin to work on that problem. Okay? All right, we're going to talk a lot more about coping on Wednesday. Don't forget your extra tickets. The TAs have created some badass videos for you guys to watch in preparation for Wednesday. And I hope you all have a splendid evening and a great day tomorrow, and I'll see you Wednesday. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good day.
You. All right, thanks, TAs. You guys are awesome. Take good care of yourselves, okay?
Thanks,
See you
you
soon.
too.
See you Wednesday morning.
Okay, bye.
Bye.